I never got to meet Woody James, my father-in-law. And from all accounts, he was a brilliant machinist and a passionate fixer-upper. And he was also a dreadful procrastinator. A few years ago, my wife, my siblings-in-law, and I had to empty out the house that he lived in during his last years. And we encountered a lot of his unfinished projects. They mainly consisted of broken, perfectly good stuff that just needed some tinkering or tweaking, but instead just sat waiting for a rainy day that never came. The most enticing of all of his projects squatted beneath a drop cloth in the carport. It was a 1964 and a half Mustang convertible. And for several decades, Woody and his son Lenny had been planning to get the pony back on the road, but the project ended up outliving them both. When Woody bought the car, it ran great, and I've seen pictures of Jenny driving it when she was still in high school. But something minor went wrong somewhere, and this classic car ended up sitting and sitting and sitting. And there's nothing worse for a car than to just sit under a drop cloth for decades. The fluids dry up and the brakes seize and the interior cracks, and soon critters start to nest in the engine compartment and under the seats. Time and neglect seed new maladies that overshadow whatever the initial minor problem was. As Neil Young says, rust never sleeps. My mental garage is full of ideas under drop cloths. Essays that I'd like to write, books that I'd like to publish, videos I'd like to make, workshops I could teach, companies I could start. They all sit in neat files and folders on this computer. And whenever I sit down to write, I pull back some of the covers and the ideas are all sitting there in rows, expectant, brimming with potential. And I'll start one up and see if it goes. And if it starts rough, I'll just usually move on. But sometimes it purrs easily to life, and with a little coaxing, transforms from a draft to an essay to a script in a few minutes. But for every essay that hits the road, there are thousands of relics that have slowly drained of life by sitting untended in storage. Ideas that no longer seem relevant. Revelations that no longer make sense. Fragments pocked with typos that I can't decipher. Insights grown foggy. Lightning bolts grown dark. Crumpled napkins and dead light bulbs. Liz Gilbert wrote a brilliant book called Big Magic, and in it she says that ideas have life of their own. And they come and they offer themselves to you. They invite you to play and to develop them. But if you leave them on ice for too long, then eventually they'll just decide to move on to another creator. And the ideas that you thought were all yours suddenly reappear in the world under somebody else's name. Projects that sit around too long start to die. They don't just gather dust that can be wiped off. They grow dull. They seize up. They crumble. Think about all the half-baked ideas that you have on the shelf. The projects that you plan to get around to eventually. The tubes of paint drying up in shoe boxes. The yellowing, unused sketchbooks. The memoir based on memories that are slipping away. Use them or lose them. Jenny and I had been waiting to get our hands on Woody's Mustang for years. We figured we could just take off where he left off. Throw on some new tires, run it through the car wash, put down the top, and drive away for nice weekends. Winched it onto a flatbed, and we hauled it to a mechanic. And his diagnosis was pretty grim. He said it would cost more to get the Mustang running than it would be to buy a brand new Mustang Paint alone would be 25 grand. Ouch. And instead, he offered us some pocket change to take it off our hands. And numbly, we agreed. Woody's project became his project. And I hope that he can get it running again. But as for you and me, let's take heed of Woody's example. It's time to stop procrastinating and get your notion into motion. The idea for this video started with one of the essays that I write every week. I write them just to send out to people who subscribe, and they're free. And I do it for the same reason that I make YouTube videos, because I have ideas and I really want to share them with you. You can get my essays too if you'd like. Just go to dannysessays.com, tell me where you want to get them, and I'll start sending them to you this week. I hope you do. Thanks for listening.